Welcome back. Opposition parties and unions in Greece blame the latest protests on a weak government and its policies, and so do some of my guests. Confidence in the government has waned under scandal and corruption charges. This, though, is the worst spate of rioting in Greece in decades. Now attention has been turned to how to stop the violence and prevent such outbreaks from happening again. The Prime Minister has ruled out using the army to intervene. He says he wants to leave it to the police to bring the country under control, doesn't want to declare martial law. But critics say it's because the army has no training and are ill-equipped to deal with riots that this is happening. The socialist opposition are calling for the government to step down. The ruling New Democracy Party has just a one-seat majority in Parliament. If the party resigns, it could mean early elections, and with such a small majority, it's likely a socialist administration would take over just 4 years after it was voted out. We're still joined by guests in Athens, Demelza Velika, also in Athens, Aristotelia Poloni, and in Manchester, Dimitrios Papadimitriou. Ms. Velika, there have been calls for the Prime Minister to resign. Should he?
I think, firstly, before everything is done, we have to resolve the situation. I think all the political parties must unite and find, a solution to the problem and to the crisis that is taking place in Athens and other cities. I don't think it's now the correct moment for political parties to call elections and to blame one another. The first thing we have to do is resolve everything and wait for the things to calm down, and then we're going to see what went wrong and see what happens. I don't think now is the moment for taking advantage of the situation and calling, for early elections.
Because, Ms. Poloni, that would certainly leave a vacuum if there isn't a vacuum at the moment. It doesn't seem as though Greece is governable. What do you think the opposition can offer the country?
Well, I'm not the representative of the opposition, though I think that the government, if not resign, I will agree with my colleague here, because we have to solve the situation first. But it seems that it cannot manage anything. And also people are more and more frustrated because the government didn't even apologize for anything. Nobody apologized, nobody resigned. If this had happened elsewhere, we would have a whole resignation. The ministers are hiding, nobody's talking. The opposition could cool things down a bit. I don't know if this is the right time. All the polls show that if we had elections tomorrow or in 2 months, it will be the Socialist Party that would govern. But I think the point here is now to calm down things and open a debate, all the political forces, all the political system, find out what the mistake is, where they went wrong, because I think they're all responsible through the decades, and how they managed to alienate a so big part of the Greek society, and especially the youth, that they don't see any perspective, they don't see any future, any hope. And it's the first generation in Greece after the war that will leave, the perspectives are that they will leave worse than their parents, and this is tragic.
And Mr. Papadimitriou, the protesters are threatening that these riots could move over, could spread rather to other countries. Is this a threat that you take seriously? Is this a threat that the EU should be taking seriously?
Not necessarily. I think at this present time the problem is confined in Greece. The problem is shaped by the very problems that the Greek government and the Greek state
I mean, you have said that before, but isn't this the time for the EU to step in and start making some demands?
Demands on who?
On the Greek government. Get them to put their house in order.
Greece is a democracy. I'm sure that the European Union trusts the Greek government, any given Greek government, to be able to deal with the problem of police brutality. There are sufficient, I think, judicial and legal guarantees that the Greek government can perform this act on its own. I don't think that the question here is European patronage on how Greece should run its own affairs. Greece is a mature enough democracy, albeit with many serious problems, capable of dealing with this issue itself.
Okay, well, Ms. Velika, I mean, if Greece has to deal with this itself, is it time to call in the army?
Sorry, did you say to call the army?
Yeah, is it time now to call in the army? Because it doesn't look as though these riots are going to abate. There are threats that these are going to continue for a long time.
I think that's a thing to see in the following days, because and yesterday was the funeral of the teenager that was killed. Today was there was a general strike. So we have to see what happens in the following days. I don't think that the army should be called or martial law should be implemented. I think that the situation is going to abate in the following days. And the thing that I think is that the police should be tougher, but I think that the situation is going to abate by itself the following days.
So the police should be tougher, but absolutely no room for the army. I'm sure that many Greeks are happy to hear that. Ms. Poloni, what is this doing to the reputation of Greece? I'm sure that from an economic point of view, it's devastating.
Yes. It is, because now the image shown, the images are not flattering at all. Even the conversation we're having right now about bringing the army, it's not flattering at all. Greeks have anti-militaristic reflexes since the dictatorship. Nobody would accept that. We have a democracy. We have a strong democracy. Of course, these images, as I said, are not flattering at all. And I was hearing today that we are in the middle of an economic crisis, and foreign investors are even more suspicious right now. This is hurting from every aspect. It's also hurting from the distractions, because in a few days we have Christmas, and many shops in Athens, many businessmen have trouble. And along all this, I don't see the thing relaxing. The Prime Minister made a few statements a few minutes ago, and he announced some measures for the people whose shops were destroyed. But nothing for the youth, nothing for the education. It seems like he's not listening. He is not hearing. He can't realize what this unrest is about.
Yeah, it certainly seems to be that the issues of youth need to be addressed, and immediately, if unemployment among youth is so high and rising.
Of course. It is high. If you come to Greece, you will see people with 2 or 3 degrees, with master's degrees, even with PhDs, being unemployed, or it's the so-called generation of 700 euros. They have to live on this money. Most of them live with their parents until they're 30 because they can't afford their own house. They don't have any dreams, as I said. It is frustrating, and nobody seems to be listening to them. It's as if the politicians are fighting with each other, making the game for their own, and they're not dealing with this problem. And now the problem is here, and it's burning everyone.
Okay, Mr. Papadimitriou, very briefly from you, if you don't mind. Rebellion is deeply embedded in the Greek psyche. With that in mind, this is not going to be the last riot, is it?
Rebellion in itself is not necessarily a bad thing. One of the refreshing assets of youth is their ability to challenge things, and that is not necessarily a bad thing. It is for the Greek authorities to make sure that this challenge does not become a systemic challenge, and the only way to achieve that is by implementing a series of measures that will help people to have trust in the government, and also to remain a little bit more optimistic about the future. The youth is right to challenge authority. That's what the youth is there for. It is then for politicians to be able to articulate these grievances and make sure that they produce the right policies to address them.
Okay, let's leave it there. Mr. Dimitris Papadimitriou talking to us, Aristotelia Poloni and Demelza Velika. Thank you all very much for your thoughts on this subject. And you, as the viewer, thank you very much for joining us on this edition of Inside Story. As always, we welcome your comments and suggestions. Please email them to us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. Goodbye for now.